I'm interested in where you were in your life when you thought about entering the Institute, and sort of what you were thinking about, and how that transpired. Can you tell me?
Yes, well, I was a senior in high school when I discovered that I may have a religious vocation. I had read the book The Nun Story, and then the movie came out, and I kept saying, that's my secret desire, but I'm never going to do anything about that, because I was always going to get married and have lots of kids. Well, then I was going to a public high school, and the priest, I was attending CCD classes, so the priest one day called me aside and said, Renee, have you ever thought of being a nun? And I said, no way. I was so angry at him. But I was like a social butterfly in high school. However, on the other hand, I was attending everything at my parish, every holy hour, every retreat, everything. So I guess that must have been a dead giveaway. After he asked me that question, I thought, well, I better explore and look into different religious orders. I had actually been raised a Protestant. I was baptized Catholic, never was raised Catholic, and so I was a Baptist in kindergarten, a real active little one, and then from 1st to 6th grade I was Methodist, and then when I was in 6th grade we moved to the big city of Seattle, and I was a Lutheran. But then they would telling the kids, you got to prepare for a confirmation, you got to memorize all this stuff, parts of the Bible, and I said, I never did that. I never did that when I was a Methodist. So I went to my mother and I said, Mom, do you think, if I was baptized Catholic, maybe I should try the Catholic Church? She said, oh no, once you're Catholic, you always have to be Catholic. And I said, well, I've shopped around. So she took me to the closest Catholic church, and I made my first communion and was very, very happy. But see, I had a grandma who was praying for me the whole time. So it's all my grandma. So anyway, going back to the question, I went to church one day, and there was a magazine. It must have been the Vision magazine with all the different religious orders. And I thought, I don't know what religious order I want, but the only thing I know, I don't want to be stuck in an order that only taught, that only nursed, that only did one thing. And in my parish, there's a big statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So I was over there all the time. Jesus, come on, tell me, what am I supposed to do? But see, what had happened was I had prayed for the perfect husband. He was not to drink, he was not to smoke, and he had to be a really good Catholic. Well, look how the Lord answered my prayers. He gave me himself. So, okay, when I'm looking at the magazine, what happened? I saw the Cabrini sisters. Oh my gosh, there was a whole list of all these things you could do. You could be a nurse, you could work with orphans, you could even be a secretary, you could be a teacher. And that just appealed to me so much. So I wrote to New York to get more information, and they said, well, why are you writing to us? Don't you know there's Cabrini Hospital in Seattle and the Sacred Heart Villa School? And I said, no, I didn't know those things. So I went up to the Sacred Heart Villa, and the sisters were so sweet, these Italian sisters. And every week they said, come back every Sunday. And they gave me a box of chocolates, and I went home, and my sister and my friend, we ate them all. So I go back every Sunday, but one Sunday they didn't give me chocolates. They gave me the travels of Mother Cabrini. Well, after reading that, I said, that's it. I like things fast. And her order was approved so fast. She was canonized so fast. She's an American. I love it. So I went to my priest and told him what I wanted to do. And he was a little bit reluctant because he said, you know, you're going to go into a religious order, you're going to have to adjust to the Italian ways. And I said, nope, you can't change my mind. That's what I want. So he wrote the letter, and I was accepted, and I was entered in Seattle, Washington at the Sacred Heart Villa Convent.
So you took your vows. Did you think you had a full understanding of the charism at that time, or what was your understanding?
Well, that's a good question. I knew that we were missionary, and right after I made my profession, I was sent to Chicago to do my nurse's training. And often the superior would say to me, I took the religious name Zita. Oh, Sister Zita's going to Australia. And I thought, oh, Jesus, I don't want to leave the USA. I don't want to go to Australia. And my mother even came to visit when I graduated from nursing school, and she said to the superior, oh, don't send her to Australia, will you? And I don't know what the superior said, but whisked. 6 months after I graduated, I was sent to Australia. I never wanted to go, but I never wanted to come back to America after spending 16 glorious years there. So I think I didn't really fully understand the dynamics of a missionary charism, but it was one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Okay, that was then, this is now. How do you understand the charism now?
Well, I think I'm still seeing the charism as very, very broad. After getting involved with prison ministry, I say join the convent and see the world. There's so many different aspects of that charism of Mother Cabrini. I mean, she just didn't tie herself down to one thing. I worked with death row inmates. I was a prison chaplain. I managed Cabrini Senior Housing for 6 months. I worked at all the shrines. I've written books. It's a very broad charism, and I did get involved in Catholic Charismatic Renewal, and that just opened up a whole new vista of the gifts and fruits of the Holy Spirit. So to me, the charism is very dynamic.
I want to go back for a minute. How you reacted when you were told to come back to Chicago, but what made it viable for you?
Well, I cried my eyes out. By that time, I had already got involved in prison ministry, and I had this little flock of inmates that were like my spiritual sons. And, I was riding high as the director of nursing, and I was very involved in every aspect of charismatic renewal. So it seemed like a disaster that I would be uprooted from Australia and sent to the city of Chicago. Oh, my goodness sakes. But the one thing that attracted me to go to Chicago was that they had Cook County Jail. And, of course, it took me a while to break into the jail, but I got there.
I want to know what it was like walking into the first prison, first jail that you ever visited. How old you were, why you were there.
I was in my late 30s, and it was in outside of Sydney, Australia, and I had befriended these two inmates who happened to be the most notorious in all of Australia, but I didn't know that at the time. And I was so excited to go. I was so excited to go that I was very, very happy to be in the prison, but there's more to that story.
Oh. Tell us.
I'll tell you what more was happening. After I'd befriended these two inmates, I wrote to them, and they wrote back, and we had really a great conversation. Well, out of the blue, the superintendent of all the prisons in the state of New South Wales, which is where Sydney is located, called me, and he said, "You want to visit Johnny? He'll slit your throat." And I said, "Oh, no, he won't." I said, "We're good friends." And he said, well, okay, kind of come at your own risk. And I did, and I brought all these religious books and medals, and we just had a great, great visit. It was, and he had already introduced me to other inmates, Johnny had. So I was just super excited and supercharged to go to the prison that first time. But I wasn't scared off.
So tell me about your first meal in a prison.
Oh, okay. Well, normally when you visit prisons, you don't eat there. However, jumping forward a little bit, 6 months later, Bill, the other one who had escaped, had befriended me, had come to the same prison. So I said to my superior once again, I said, I want to go and visit both of them. She said, okay. So when I went to visit them, the superintendent of the prisons, who had called me before, said, listen, you come, you spend as many days as you want visiting them. So I went up and I was all over the visiting room, visiting other inmates, and the inmates cooked a meal for me. And it was delightful. I think it was fish, if I remember. But then the superintendent of that particular prison took me on a tour all around the prison, and then I was asked to speak at one of the Protestant services. But I've seen many meals in prison after working in them, and they're not that delightful, but this one was good. Working in the prison system is a work of evangelization. It's kind of like the new evangelization. Most of the inmates did not have a father figure or a positive father figure. Most of them come from very tragic situations. And Mother Cabrini herself was into prison ministry, and as a matter of fact, believe it or not, the inmates at Cook County Jail actually, I don't know how they did this, but they actually gave her a horse and buggy so she could get from Cabrini Hospital to the jail conveniently. And I know she also had something to do with inmates here in the New York area as well. So prison ministry was certainly within her scope of evangelizing or ministry or charism. Working as a prison chaplain, I was the chaplain to everybody, the Native Americans, the Islamics. When you work with, I was one of the first women to work with the Department of Corrections in the United States, Catholic women, because normally we're not allowed to do it because we're not ordained. But Archbishop Hunthausen kind of unofficially ordained me by just sending a letter of recommendation, because ordination just means that the church supports, your ministry, kind of undergirding it. So, yeah.
So all this time you're doing this work and you're moving around, you're living in community.
No.
You're not living in community?
No.
Oh, okay.
Part of the time I was, but when in 1997, when I was in Seattle, I officially got the job in 1989, although I had already been working in this system for a couple of years. In 1997, the sisters where I was living in Seattle most of them needed nursing assistants, so they were all transferred to Philadelphia, and only two of us were left in Seattle, and we were both living separately in apartments. So a lot of that time I was not in community. I was in community in Chicago.
Okay. In your life as a sister, can you give me one of the most profound, the most life-changing, the most heart-stopping experiences for you?
Well, I think it would have to be my involvement in Catholic Charismatic Renewal and having been prayed over for the full release of the Holy Spirit in my life, because that was the gateway that opened so many things. I've been very involved in healing prayer. I never thought I'd be an author, and I never thought I'd be a prison chaplain, because I'm a little scaredy cat. So how that happened. So I think it all went down to the baptism of the Spirit in 1972. August 26, 1972, in Sydney, Australia. I was prayed over by a whole group of religious people.
So what's your current ministry? What do you consider your current ministry to be?
Well, I'd like to know. I feel that I'm I'm an evacuee from Hurricane Ida in New Orleans, and I've only been here since September 9th of last year, and I really feel in a way that I do have a ministry here with the sisters. There's not a lot of us who can do a lot of things, and so I'm involved with the spirituality committee and little jobs all the way around, but I'm also expanding my writing. I've written 3 books, and the Practical Catholic Prayers for Such a Time as This, my last booklet. I'm trying to get that published, and I'm also writing some other articles that I'm hoping to get published.
So you're
and I'm also a volunteer with the Sisters of Life.
And I think you should tell us what that is.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Sisters of Life was started by Bishop O'Connor here in New York. And I think it was way back in the 90s. And it's an order of sisters who are very pro-life. They work with women who might potentially be considering an abortion, but they provide all these resources for them, and they can even live with them, so that it's a pro-life order. It's a relatively new order of sisters in New York.
And I know that's important to you.
Yes, yeah, I'm very pro-life, yeah.
In your life as religious, as an MSC, what to you has been most fulfilling? What have you personally gotten?
Well, I think working in the prison system was just, it was like a dream job. And I'm so grateful to the sisters that I was allowed to do that, because many orders that wouldn't even have been an opportunity. And, you know, people kind of wonder why would I enjoy it so much, but the inmates I worked with originally were all mentally ill, and I have a very compassionate heart, and I was able to bring the Christian Motorcycle Association into the big yard, and they would have their pictures taken with them. We'd have different gospel groups come in with music ministry. We'd have the Methodists come in as Santa Claus and give a gift to everyone. It was so fulfilling. It was like a spiritual motherhood that I could just give to all these wonderful men. I always worked with men.
Okay. This was just banter.
I'm
really.
Not an introvert.
Are you sure? but this was a treat.
Oh, thank you. It was
Do you
fun.
think?
Absolutely.
Great way to end this day.
Well, the two were really